Food safety and sanitation is an important way to mitigate foodborne illnesses in the kitchen. There are many different ways a food can become contaminated in the kitchen space. Those include direct contamination, indirect contamination, leaving food in the temperature danger zone for too long, and inadequate and improper pest control. In addition to handling your food, you and your environment have an impact on food safety and sanitation. After this session, you should be able to identify the ways in which your food can become unsafe or questionable for consumption, and make sure your kitchen is as safe and sanitary as you can make it. So let's get started. There are many different ways your food can become contaminated in the kitchen. The first route of contamination is direct contamination. This is when food via hands, coughing, sneezing, air, water, insects, rats, mice, other foods, equipments, and utensils. Beneath direct contamination, there are a couple subheadings. The first is biological direct contamination. This includes bacteria. There are 4 kinds of bacteria: harmless, beneficial, undesirable, and disease-causing bacteria known as pathogens. I will be discussing more about bacteria in depth in a following companion session. Main bacterial infections include botulism, staph or staphylococcus, E. coli, salmonella, Clostridium perfringens, and streptococcal, which is strep. Another form of direct contamination includes parasites, and the main to be concerned about is the Anacasaceus parasite, which is an intestinal worm. There are viruses, such as the Norwalk virus, which is an acute gastrointestinal illness caused from tainted water or food, or person-to-person contact, or even simply by touching contaminated surfaces. Norwalk virus is the leading cause of foodborne illnesses coming from the kitchen. The second kitchen virus is trichinosis. This is also an acute gastrointestinal illness from eating raw or undercooked meats, most notoriously pork. If you have any immune system issues, you should always be careful to not eat undercooked meats. Another form of direct contamination includes fungi. These include molds and yeast. When it comes to molds, deadly molds are very rare in the kitchen. For the most part, mold is not dangerous, though there are rare types known as mycotoxins that cause mitotoxicosis. Mold primarily affects the appearance and taste of food in the kitchen, making it discolored, bad tasting, smelly, or undesirable. Mold can grow in almost any environment, but can be destroyed by cooking a food for 10 minutes at 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 degrees Celsius. However, the toxins they have already produced are heat resistant. The second type of fungi is yeast. Yeasts are generally safe and exist in the air all around us. It's actually what is responsible for the specific taste of sourdough bread from San Francisco. It's a very specific strain of wild yeast. Yeast is also essential in fermentation, like grain to alcohol or bread. Yeast is not harmful, but can cause food to spoil. Yeast can be killed at 136 degrees Fahrenheit or 58 degrees Celsius. Yeast is an organism that is very sensitive to high temperatures. This is why when you're baking bread or using yeast for cooking, you have to be careful about the temperature of the water you're using to activate the yeast, because too hot of water could actually kill your yeast and destroy your product. The second main type of direct contamination is chemical contamination. This includes residual chemicals used in food service environments, but also toxic metals. Please refer back to the equipment video where I talk about copper and aluminum and their negative interactions with acids in the kitchen. Another type of toxic metal in the kitchen is used to bond enamelware, and that is called antimony, and it can get chipped easily and contaminate the food. Cadmium is also a toxic metal and is used in plated ice cube trays or containers. Cyanide is a toxic metal used in silver polishing that can also show up in the kitchen as a contamination. There's lead, which is in water pipes, soldering, utensils, and sometimes found in the glaze on some imported ceramic items. Copper is also a metal when used outside of the pots and pans that can also cause negative interactions, such as with carbonated beverages that have been in contact with copper tubing. And then there is zinc, and the contamination with zinc comes in the form of zinc-plated galvanized utensils. Another big form of toxic metal contamination includes fish and shellfish that have been living in polluted waters. Another form of direct contamination is when a foreign object finds its way into a food source. These include metal shavings from a worn can opener, pieces of glass from a broken container, hair, and dirt. Cross-contamination is the next form of contamination in the kitchen, and there are several ways to reduce cross-contamination depending on the source. The first source is your body. In the professional kitchen, there are several standards for personal hygiene and cleanliness. Personal cleanliness includes clean hands, trimmed natural nails, no jewelry, little to no makeup, having your hair tied back if appropriate, beards and other facial hair covered with a hairnet, clean uniforms and clean hand towels, appropriate footwear that will not cause slipping in the kitchen, and there is no eating, drinking, or chewing gum in food preparation areas. The second source of cross-contamination comes from dishes and equipment cleanliness. It's important that the dish pit is set up properly to reduce the cross-contamination from dirty dishes to clean dishes. There are two standards of dish and equipment cleanliness, clean versus sanitary. Clean means there is no visible soil on the item. Sanitary means that harmful substances have been reduced to a safe level. Sanitation requires a temperature of at least 171 degrees Fahrenheit or 77 degrees Celsius for at least 30 seconds. A chemical sanitation solution alternative is often used in professional kitchens. The third point of cross-contamination in the kitchen is pest management. Insects like roaches and flies and rodents like mice and rats. These pests spread disease in the kitchen. One way to deal with pest management is by rotating food inventory to reduce the likeliness of nesting. Always keeping the floor swept so that there is no food debris on the floor. Making sure dust and crumbs do not accumulate in corners of either the kitchen floor or the counters. Controlling garbage and being aware of signs of infestation for early detection is key in pest management. Keeping things 6 inches from the floor and 6 inches from the wall is always a good idea if possible. So there are several different ways that you can reduce contamination in the refrigerator by how you handle your food. When you store food in your refrigerator, always store your meat on the bottom shelf. That way, if it drips any blood or anything else, it will not contaminate everything else in your refrigerator. Another important part of food safety and sanitation in the kitchen, and I know you've heard me say this before, is never put hot food in the refrigerator. Putting hot food in the refrigerator causes the temperature of the refrigerator to raise and potentially puts everything in the refrigerator in the danger zone. The key to putting hot food in the refrigerator is to let the food cool a bit on the counter until it becomes a temperature that will not shock the refrigerator. One way to make sure your kitchen stays safe is to implement safe working habits. It goes without saying that there shouldn't be horsing around in the kitchen. However, anybody who's worked in a professional kitchen knows there gets to be a little horsing around. If there is horsing around the kitchen, or you must horse around in the kitchen, do so in spaces that are clear of knives and slippery surfaces. Other ways to stay a safe worker in the kitchen is to always carry your knives properly when moving from one part of the kitchen to another, even if nobody else is around. Never run with a knife, obviously. Always be aware of your surroundings and how the kitchen is operating. If you must transport your knife from across the kitchen, do so in a knife roll or a knife case, or always held with the tip pointed down at your side. There are 3 types of safety equipment that are always in professional kitchens and that you should probably consider having at home. And those include fire extinguishers. Extinguishers are classified by A, B, or C, or a combination of these. Fire extinguishers classified as A are to be used on ordinary combustibles like wood, paper, and cloth. Fire extinguishers classified as B are to be used with flammable liquids such as gasoline or cooking oil. Fire extinguishers classified as C are to be used on live electricity. There is a link in the description to further learn about how to select the correct extinguisher for your home, shop, or business. I encourage you to take a look at it. The second piece of safety equipment in the kitchen is a good ventilation system. Whether in the home or the professional kitchen, it is essential to keep your air free of contaminants as well as keep the air clean. The third, and perhaps the second most important piece of safety equipment to have in your kitchen is a first aid kit. A well-stocked first aid kit is obviously important. And don't forget, if you work in a professional kitchen, to stay up to date on your tetanus shots. A first aid kit should contain the following: gauzes of different sizes, band-aids of different sizes, an elastic bandage like an ace wrap, a splint, skin tape or medical tape, burn ointment, alcohol, hydrogen peroxide or any antiseptic solution, cotton balls, antibiotic ointment, wipes and solution, an EpiPen, an eye flush, a tweezers, a bandage scissors, antihistamine medicine, and non-latex gloves. Well, that's it for safety and sanitation in the kitchen. Please make sure to check out the companion video that's solely on bacterial infections. I hope this video has helped you come up with an idea or two on how to stay safe and sanitary in your kitchen. Please come back for the next video when we cover different types of cuisines from around the world. Please leave me a comment in the comments section if you have any questions, and as always, have a wonderful day.